we have undertaken. Ladies and gentlemen, as an outcome of the ongoing reforms, the economy of Uzbekistan, despite the global challenges, is showing a steady growth. Over the past 6 years, the gross domestic product of the country has grown over 1.5 times. Our main objective is to double this figure by 2030. Another priority of our economic liberalization is to become a full member of the World Trade Organization in the near future. Since 2017, poverty in our country has been halved thanks to the policies aimed at improving the living standards of our people. We plan to reduce it to 7% by 2030. We intend to increase by several times the scale of water supply, healthcare, education, and other social services to population. We support the UN Secretary General's initiative, Global Accelerator on Jobs and Social Protection. In order to share best practices within the framework of this initiative, we propose to hold in 2024 in our country the World Conference titled Social Protection, the Path Towards Development under the auspices of the United Nations. Dear participants of the summit, in recent years, Uzbekistan achieved remarkable results in the protection of human rights. Forced labor and child labor have been completely abolished in our country. For a century, millions of people were forced to pick cotton in Uzbekistan. The vast majority of the population, teachers and doctors, entrepreneurs, workers and employees, and unfortunately, school children and university students were mobilized to pick cotton every year from September to December. As a result, boycotts of Uzbek cotton were announced, and the country was blacklisted for several years. Thanks to our strong will and determination, now it is all history. Our people have been completely liberated from cotton slavery. The ban on forced labor is guaranteed in our renewed constitution, and the criminal liability for the involvement in forced labor has been introduced. I believe that it is necessary to intensify the global fight against forced and child labor. Our experience shows that it is possible to put an end to this. Ladies and gentlemen, one of Uzbekistan's strategic tasks is the development of human capital and training of a creative young generation. We believe that high-quality education, accessible to all, is the most effective factor in eradicating poverty, improving public welfare, and achieving sustainable economic growth. In this respect, our country has gained considerable experience in recent years. The education system is undergoing radical transformations. In the last 6 years, the coverage of preschool education has increased from 21% to 70%, and that of higher education from 9% to 38%. By 2030, we will create conditions for every child to have access to preschool education and for half of secondary school graduates to obtain higher education. Dear heads of delegations, in recent years, Central Asia has embarked on a path of good neighborliness, stability, joint partnership, and progress. Thanks to our joint efforts, Uzbekistan has managed to address problems of state borders, transport corridors, and water use with all its neighbors. Mutual trade between the countries of the region has grown by more than 2.5 times, and the number of joint ventures has increased 5-fold. Our region has become a promising center for economic development, transport and communications bridge connecting east and west, north and south. This has led to a growing interest in our country. Central Asia's openness to the world is becoming the main condition for ensuring the region's security and stable development. It is safe to say that our people unite around a growing sense of regional identity, and this sense is growing ever stronger. It's not only our history that is common, but also our future and our vital interests that are shared. Expanding our regional cooperation is and will be our only choice. I'm convinced that with the support of the international community, Central Asia will continue on the path of unity. In this regard, transforming Central Asia into a peaceful and prosperous region will henceforth remain a priority goal of Uzbekistan's foreign policy. Distinguished participants of the summit, in Central Asia, where almost half of the population belongs to the younger generation, the issues of youth and creating opportunities for fulfilling their potential have an utmost importance. In order to strengthen cooperation in this sphere, the countries of our region have recently signed an agreement on the common dimensions of the youth policy. We are currently interested in establishing effective cooperation with the United Nations and its specialized structures, studying best practices and achievements of other regions. In this regard, I propose to establish a working group at the United Nations to support the youth development in Central Asia. As part of this, it would be expedient to develop the program Central Asia's Youth Agenda 2030. Distinguished heads of delegations, the active participation of women in society and public management, public administration is an urgent issue today. The noblest goal of our national policy is to ensure family stability, legal protection, and peaceful life for women and girls. In addition, we are carrying out systemic work to achieve equality between men and women. For example, last year, 49% of university enrollments accounted for girls. For the first time, women's share in the public administration reached 35%. A special law has been passed to protect women and minors from domestic violence. We are interested in further expansion of cooperation with UN Women. As a joint initiative, we propose to hold the Asian Women Forum in Uzbekistan next year to discuss the issues of fulfilling the creative potential of women and exchange experiences and best practices. Ladies and gentlemen, currently the world is facing a critical environmental situation. The triple planetary crisis of the climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and the environmental contamination are worsening. In such challenging conditions, while Central Asian countries grapple with the RLC tragedy, the region is becoming one of the most vulnerable parts of the world in the face of climate change. Uzbekistan is doing its best to mitigate the consequences of the RLC tragedy, which remains a global problem. In recent years, 1.7 million hectares of green areas with drought-tolerant plants have been created on the dried-up bed of the RLC. The support of the international community is essential for us to continue these vital efforts. Over the next 30 years, the air temperature in our region has increased by 1.5 degrees. This is more than twice the global average warming. As a result, nearly 1/3 of the total area of glaciers in the region has melted. If this tendency continues, the flow of the two major rivers in our region, Amudarya and Sidarya, may decrease by 15% in the next 20 years. It is expected that per capita water supply will decrease by 25% and agricultural yields by 40%. Unless we take timely and effective measures, the consequences of these problems will seriously undermine our region's socio-economic stability. Given this context, we support the establishment of the position of the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Water Resources. We are in favor of attracting and introducing the state-of-the-art technologies in the process of establishing a water-saving technologies platform in Central Asia using the United Nations water mechanism. We are building up a systemic cooperation as part of the Green Development Program adopted by the countries of the region. Such a partnership completely meets our interest and is aimed at preventing threats related to climate change. In this context, I believe that the introduction of the Central Asian Climate Dialogue would be expedient. We put forward an initiative to adopt a UN General Assembly resolution, Central Asia facing global climate threats, solidarity for common prosperity. We propose to discuss its substance at the International Climate Forum to be held in Samarkand next year. In this regard, I would like to emphasize that adapting the main sector of Uzbekistan's economy to climate change, achieving carbon neutrality, and drastically increasing the share of green energy remains a strategic task for us. Dear participants of the Assembly, we need to strengthen our joint efforts in preventing the spread of the scourge of extremism and radicalization of youth. Last March in Tashkent, the Joint Plan of Action for the Implementation of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy in Central Asia was adopted. As part of our national strategy on countering extremism and terrorism, we are placing a particular emphasis on this matter. This includes helping people affected by extremist ideas to return to a normal life and their reintegration into society. We have gained unique experience in this regard. We have conducted the humanitarian Operation Meher, which means benevolence in English 5 times. As part of that operation, we have repatriated to our country more than 530 citizens, primarily women and children from conflict zones in the Middle East and Afghanistan. They have all received medical, psychological, social assistance, and other support. In June this year, here at the United Nations headquarters, the international community learned the stories from people repatriated to our country and embarked on a new life. In order to continue ongoing actions in this direction and promote a permanent exchange of experience, we have taken specific measures to establish the Regional Expert Council on systemic work with persons repatriated from combat zones under the auspices of the United Nations Counter-Terrorism Office. United Nations member states must be more unified and work together to combat common threats such as international terrorism. I would like to emphasize another important matter. We believe that the recent manifestations of religious intolerance and Islamophobia that have taken place in some countries are unacceptable. In order to promote globally the ideas of religious tolerance and cooperation, we propose to establish in Uzbekistan the International Center for Interreligious Dialogue and Cooperation under the auspices of UNESCO. We take great pride that our country is a homeland of profound scholars and thinkers, such as Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Biruni, Ibn Sina, Imam Bukhari, Mirza Ulugh and Ali Shirnavoy, who made incomparable contributions to the development of science and shown Islam to be a religion of knowledge and peace. In order to study the rich heritage of these great scholars and to reveal to the world the true humane essence of Islam, we propose to organize in Uzbekistan next year the international conference titled Islam, a Religion of Peace and Kindness. esteemed participants of the session, the developments in Afghanistan directly impact international security. The country is facing a new situation and demands a unique approach to resolving the Afghan issue. Leaving Afghanistan again alone with its own problems would be a grave mistake. Ignoring, isolating, and imposing sanctions only exacerbates the hardships faced by the ordinary Afghan people. We believe that humanitarian aid to the Afghan people should not be reduced. We call for the development of appropriate mechanisms to utilize Afghanistan's frozen international assets to address the acute social problems in this country. We need an open, peaceful, and sustainable Afghanistan that is actively engaged in regional cooperation initiatives and is ready for mutually beneficial partnerships with its neighbors and other countries. Standing here at this high rostrum, I urge the international community to come together in resolving the issue of Afghanistan. I believe it is essential that under the leadership of the United Nations, we jointly develop a flexible and constructive approach to the Afghan issue. Dear President, dear participants of the Assembly, in this turning point of history, we must all consider what planet we will leave to the future generations. Only through shared aspirations and collective action can we achieve lasting peace and prosperity. Now, more than ever, we need mutual trust, unity, and a spirit of cooperation. Concluding my statement, I would like to reiterate that Uzbekistan, in this path, always remains committed to strengthening deep and long-term cooperation with United Nations structures and with all countries. Thank you for your attention.
On behalf of the Assembly, I thank the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan for the statement he's just made. I would ask the protocol to escort His Excellency. We've heard the last statement in the debate of this session. The fifth plenary session will continue immediately as soon as this session is adjourned. The session is adjourned. I declare open the fifth plenary session of the General Assembly. I call to order, rather. The Assembly will now hear the statement by His Excellency Luis Alberto Arce Catacora, Constitutional President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. I would ask the protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Luis Alberto Arce Catacora, Constitutional President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia, and I invite him to address this General Assembly. The President of my country.
Thank you very much, Brother Vice President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Diego Pari Rodriguez. It is a source of happiness and pride to see you at the helm of this assembly, the most important multilateral body created by humanity, and we are convinced that, along with President Dennis Francis and his leadership, you will honor the names of our countries and our Latin American and Caribbean region. Distinguished heads of state, government, ministers of foreign affairs, brothers and sisters of delegations present here, good afternoon, one and all. Brother Vice President, a year ago, in this same forum, we denounced the fact that the world was grappling with a capitalist crisis which was jeopardizing humanity and the very existence of this planet. And unfortunately, a year after that statement, that same delicate scene has not changed at all. The capitalist system, in its enthusiasm for imposing a decadent hegemony, is replicating practices of domination and colonial exploitation that need to be overcome. Unfortunately, many of the brilliant proposals that emerged within this assembly have been ignored, or they were simply omitted due to interests that are part and parcel of the savage capitalist system of exploitation which prioritizes production and reproduction of capital rather than safeguarding the lives of human beings and the very existence of the planet. It is clear that we find ourselves before increasing precariousness of the economy due to the impact of the many bellicose conflicts that are shaking the world today. Peace and security are very much at imminent risk, given the lack of determination by the international community to propose solutions that would emphasize dialogue and put an end to bellicose efforts and warmongering promoted by the transnationals of war. To that, we must add the serious impact of the environmental crisis, the impact on all living systems in all corners of the world. According to experts, due to the prevailing system, we have exceeded 6 of the 9 planetary limits within which humanity and Mother Earth as a whole need to be able to live in order to continue developing and prospering. It's worth highlighting here that this tragic situation was further exacerbated in recent decades due to the unipolarity and unilateral inaction and due to unfulfilled commitments. Pending challenges continue to be many and enormous, and today we find ourselves, however, at the dawn of a new international configuration. We are convinced that we are bearing witness to the building of a new international order, a situation whereby the United Nations and the General Assembly needs to uphold the principles for which it was created and play a vital role. A new world order where we can all participate equally, with equal rights and obligations, without impositions of any kind, without any masters or slaves, without double standards to measure some and others, without sanctions or those that are sanctioned. This needs to be a new order where solidarity would prevail. Complementarity and collaboration need to go above and beyond egotism and pettiness. With that certainty, it is possible and necessary to create such a world, and the plurinational state of Bolivia, to that end, would like to share the following ideas and suggestions. First, we reiterate that, like we said last year, our proposal is that the world be declared as a territory of peace. We must put an end, once and for all, to the arms race, and we must prioritize dialogue, sincere dialogue and diplomacy amongst peoples in order to settle armed conflict that threatens the very existence of humanity. It is urgent that our nations unite in a collective effort, bringing together diverse voices, especially those from regions that are far removed from the rhetoric of confrontation, and yet these far removed peoples are those that suffer the repercussions from war in different dimensions. We need to give peace a chance, and in that endeavor, the Organization of the United Nations has a fundamental role to play in order to reduce tension and to make progress in dialogue that would make it possible to consolidate sound diplomatic policies and settlements of disputes, which are on the agenda of our organization. And along these ideas, we'd like to reiterate our deep-seated concern due to the escalation of violence of the conflict in Eastern Europe and the threat of several countries to exacerbate the situation through confrontation and the use of weapons of mass destruction, weapons that use impoverished radioactive elements, and non-conventional weapons, which are banned by international law through various international instruments which are binding. We note with great alarm that military expenditures around the world have reached historical numbers. Up to April of 2023, the world invested more than $2.24 trillion in weapons and the industry of war. If those resources were to be invested in peace, in mediation, in dialogue, in the development of peoples, and invested in life rather than investing in destruction and death, we would not find ourselves on the verge of a crisis which further exacerbates inequality around the world and which are contrary to the very objectives set forth in this scenario and further exacerbate poverty around the world. The ways and means of waging war should not be unlimited. An increasing number of countries is seeking to use outer space in order to improve their military capacity with a view to protect their national security, and yet further endangering the peace and security of our planet in doing so. We deeply regret that maintaining peace and security has become a goal which is increasingly challenging. A genuine pace can only be achieved through the effective implementation of the mechanisms set forth in the United Nations Charter and in the complete elimination of all types of weapons. Bolivia will always be committed to defending and strengthening multilateralism and to continue to contribute to disarmament by upholding international law, international humanitarian law, and doing so from a vision based on peace and social justice, the well-being of people, and peaceful coexistence. We reiterate our regional commitment to proclaim Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, based on the promotion and respect of the proposals and principles set forth in the United Nations Charter and in international law, as we expressed in the context of the 7th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. Also, at this summit between the European Union and CELAC, which was held in Brussels last July, we indicated our desire to have Latin American, Caribbean, and Europe living in peace. Our desire that our peoples would be able to bring about peace in a capitalist model which cannot actually offer us peace, and thereby abandon practices which in past histories have not been satisfactory in terms of achieving an equitable and complementary relationship between our regions. It's necessary to therefore break the international